Hey guys, it's Sebastian from AskSebby, and today we are going to talk about some pretty big changes to the Centurion Lounge if you are someone who has an Amex Platinum card. So there are going to be 3 big changes for accessing these lounges. The new rules will come into effect on March 22nd of 2019. If you're a Platinum card holder, then you are going to only be able to access the lounge within 3 hours of your original flights, or if you can prove that you have a connecting flight. The connecting flight part is pretty important because there are people who have long layovers. Number 2 is that card members who arrive to a lounge as their final destination can no longer enter it. Number 3 is that for guests, in the past you were allowed either 2 guests or immediate family, so your significant other as well as your kids. Moving forward, it's going to be 2 guests, so even if you have 2 kids that are 10 and 11, that's going to count as 2 guests. The one exception to this is if you have kids that are under 2 or 2 and under technically, who are going to count as lap infants. I run through my thoughts on all 3 of these and also what I think will eventually happen despite all of these rules. One big thing is that for a lot of cities, we've already seen these rules come into play. So the first one and the second one have pretty much been rolling out in San Francisco since fall of 2018. Oftentimes when you go to the lounge, you see a sign out front telling you specifically this. To me, I think the first rule is pretty fair just because if you're at the airport 3 hours beforehand, I don't know, even as someone who is very careful and risk adverse of missing flights, I typically don't get there 3 hours before the flight, so not really the biggest loss there. If for someone who's trying to get some food and get some drinks, I think it's pretty reasonable to have that 3-hour limit. There is some exceptions if you are trying to get some work done maybe, but still, even then. Number 2 is one that I'm not as happy with, but then I am pretty biased here because I had a specific use case where I benefited from it. American Express has a lot of data, and I'm guessing that this is the right move for them to make sure that more people can access the lounge. For my specific use case, it was accessing it when I went to Vegas, just because I would typically grab drinks before heading onto the Strip. For Vegas, I'm typically there to eat and to drink and have fun, so it just makes sense to grab a few drinks before heading out. For me though, it's not really the end of the world, and it doesn't really change my decision making in terms of whether I want to keep the card. So yes, it was something that was nice, but it doesn't fundamentally change the card for me. For some business people, this is definitely going to be very annoying, just because you might be arriving from New York and you might want to shower before having meetings. You typically do want to wash off that airport's airplane sweats. Number 3 is one that I know people get very defensive about on both sides. One side hates kids, one side is like, hey, why is American Express targeting me because I have kids? Because before I could bring in all of them, and now I can't bring in as many. So for me, my experience, and again, everyone's going to have a biased experience, I haven't really seen that many kids in the Centurion Lounge. And even when I have, they've mostly been in the kids' room and they've been pretty well behaved. So it doesn't really affect me whether you can bring 2 kids or 4 kids or 3 kids. Yeah. Again, I haven't really been affected by this, so I don't really care, not really going to judge. One thing I mentioned earlier is that a lot of airports have already tried soft versions of this, and it's kind of helped, but lounges are still relatively packed. Given this, I wouldn't be surprised if American Express became even more stringent with the rules. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually people were not allowed to bring any guests at all. It's one of those weird situations where people go to the lounges because if you compare other domestic options, they're relatively bad. Again, if you look at airport options in other places, if you look at the United Club, if you look at Delta lounges, they're not really as good in terms of the food. There are exceptions to this. I've been to some Delta lounges that are pretty good, but I feel like on average, it's not that great. Hopefully that was helpful, and let me know if you guys have any questions. My question for you guys is whether this is something that is going to force you to cancel the card. Are you thinking about it, or does it not affect you at all? Let me in the community know down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, it really helps us out. If you know anyone else who'd benefit from what we just talked about, feel free to share this video with them because it's probably going to help them out. But otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.